I started working nights at the state prison because they needed extra guards for a high priority block. No one told me exactly why it was high priority. My first night, I saw the cell assignments. One cell was marked Tyson, keep minimal contact. I didn't think much of it. A celebrity in prison? Strange, but I thought it was just temporary. The block was almost empty, which made it creepier. The fluorescent lights flickered constantly, and old cameras groaned with static. Every night, I walked the same route, trying to keep my nerves steady. The other guards whispered rumors. The inmates in this wing saw things that nobody wanted to talk about. Tyson arrived midweek. He didn't speak to anyone, barely even looked at us. But cameras caught him standing at the corner of his cell, staring at the wall for hours. I tried to ignore it, but the way the lights flickered when he moved made me feel uneasy. Something about this cell was off. At exactly 3:11 a.m., I noticed Tyson would wake up, stand, and whisper to the wall. The microphones picked up nothing. The static on the cameras grew heavier during those moments. I felt a chill like someone was breathing directly behind me. I tried to leave, but the old rules of the block said, never exit during his episodes. That night, I heard something I shouldn't have. I checked the guard office after the shift. An old folder caught my eye, files on Tyson's transfer. Notes mentioned night terrors and previous inmates drawing shadow figures on the walls. Every previous guard in the wing had nightmares. I tried to shrug it off, but the same feeling of being watched clung to me like a shadow. One night, while doing my rounds, I heard a whisper. I froze. You hear it too, right? It was Tyson. I hadn't heard anything before. I looked at him, but he was staring at the wall, perfectly still. Behind his cell, a vent rattled. I swear the sound came from it, but there was nothing inside. The cameras showed something impossible. A shadow loomed behind Tyson when he stood at 3:11 a.m. In person, nothing was there. I couldn't explain it. The older guards just shook their heads and said, never go near his cell after 3. I wanted to laugh, but every night, the air grew heavier, and I felt something unseen following me. The next night, I stayed near the monitors, trying to catch what the cameras might miss. At 3:11 a.m., Tyson stood up again. This time, the shadow didn't vanish when I looked directly at it. It lingered, stretching across the cell, moving like it had its own will. My heart raced, but I couldn't leave. Rules said we stay until the end of the shift. I noticed the lights in his cell flickering differently than the others. It was almost like they were breathing, dimming, and brightening in a rhythm I couldn't explain. The other inmates avoided this cell entirely. Even the guards whispered that something about it just isn't normal. I didn't know whether to believe them or think I was losing my mind. The folder I found had sketches from previous inmates, dark, distorted figures standing behind the bars. Each sketch was dated before Tyson arrived. Some guards claimed that at night, the shadows moved differently when Tyson was awake. I tried not to think about it, but the lines between what was real and what was imagined were blurring. Then came the blackout, 7 seconds of darkness. In that time, I heard heavy breathing right beside me, though no one was there. When the lights returned, Tyson was standing inches from the bars, looking straight at me. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I wanted to speak, but words failed me. That night, I saw something that no camera could ever catch. I started noticing patterns. Every night, the events repeated almost perfectly. Tyson would wake, whisper to the wall, shadows appeared, lights flickered, and some inexplicable presence loomed. Even the old guards, who had seen it all before, avoided looking directly at him. It was as if the block itself obeyed a hidden, sinister rule. One night, I heard him speak again. It doesn't follow me. It follows this place. I just see it more clearly. I shivered. For the first time, He seemed afraid. I wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his voice warned me not to. It wasn't him causing fear. He was a witness, a victim of whatever haunted that cell block. The next night, while monitoring cameras, I saw the shadow step out of Tyson's cell. It moved slowly, deliberately, toward the hallway. Tyson sat on the floor, hands over his ears, whispering to himself. The shadow stopped as it reached the wall, then vanished. I couldn't tell if it was real or my imagination, but the unease stayed with me for hours. I started noticing patterns. Every night, Tyson's routine repeated perfectly. He'd wake at 3:11, whisper to the wall, the lights would flicker, and shadows stretched along the floor. Even the old guards avoided his cell. The air seemed thicker around him. Something about the block itself felt alive, like it watched, waited, and obeyed rules no one could explain. Fear clung to me like a second skin. One night, he whispered again, "It doesn't follow me. It follows this place." His voice was calm but terrified. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the warning in his tone stopped me. He wasn't causing fear. He was witnessing it. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but the block's silence and flickering lights trapped me in place, making me realize Tyson was a prisoner in more ways than one. The next night, I saw it clearly on camera. A shadow stepped out of Tyson's cell, moving deliberately toward the hallway. He sat on the floor, hands over his ears, murmuring to himself. The shadow paused at the wall, then vanished. The footage showed nothing unusual, but I saw it in real time. My stomach churned. The block had rules beyond explanation, and Tyson was caught in them, powerless. During the night, I felt it watching me. The hallway air thickened, and the temperature dropped. The vent above Tyson's cell rattled, though it led nowhere. A faint whisper tickled my ear, impossible to identify, yet undeniably present. I froze, terrified to move. Every guard before me had warned, "Don't interact, don't speak, don't look." But how could I obey invisible rules I didn't fully understand? That night, the shadows acted differently. Something new appeared. Cameras glitched again at 3:11 a.m. Tyson stood as always, shadow behind him, moving strangely, unnaturally. The other guards whispered about episodes, but no one explained. I realized the block wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was haunted by repetition, by invisible rules repeating over decades. I felt trapped between time and place, powerless, staring at a man more frightened than I had ever been, yet bound by forces I couldn't name. The vent rattled violently that night. I swear I saw it bend slightly, though physics forbade it. Tyson murmured again, eyes locked on the wall. Shadows stretched across the floor like black liquid. I wanted to call for help, but the radio crackled with static. The old folder came to mind. Sketches, nightmares, notes about previous guards. Everyone had seen this, yet no one left. I understood now why. I realized Tyson was a witness, not a villain. The block itself was the horror, an entity feeding on fear and repetition. The shadows were real in ways cameras couldn't capture. That night, I saw something move past my peripheral vision arc, deliberate, observing. I couldn't identify it, and I knew if I turned my head, it would vanish, leaving me alone with the silence, the flickering lights, and the terror that wouldn't end. The next night, I kept my distance, but couldn't stop watching. Tyson's routine began at 3:11 a.m. The shadow appeared, stretching, but this time it lingered longer. It seemed to watch me, not him. My heart raced, muscles frozen. I whispered a prayer to stay unnoticed. Every step, every breath felt amplified. The block wasn't just haunted, it was aware. And somehow, it knew I was watching. I reviewed old guard notes during a break. They described similar experiences. Shadows, whispers, lights flickering, unexplained cold spots. Every account ended with the same warning. Don't look, don't speak, don't stay. I realized this wasn't just Tyson's problem. The block had a pattern. It consumed attention and fear. I shivered, understanding I was now part of the repeating nightmare. That night, a low rumble vibrated through the floor. The shadow moved closer to my end of the hallway. Tyson crouched, hands over his ears, murmuring, "It watches. It waits." I saw movement behind the bars in ways cameras couldn't capture. The air thickened, each breath heavier than the last. I felt trapped, heart hammering, knowing something unseen was aware of my every motion. A vent rattled violently, then fell silent. I froze, noticing Tyson standing perfectly still, staring at the wall. The shadow flickered across the floor, impossibly long, and paused directly where I stood. I wanted to run but couldn't. Something held me there, silent, invisible. I realized the block didn't just haunt the prisoners, it hunted anyone awake at night. That night, the shadows changed. They moved toward me. I felt it then, something behind me shifting, not visible, but undeniably present. The temperature dropped. My breath fogged in the hallway. Tyson whispered without moving his lips, "It sees everything?" I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I realized every guard before me had felt this. The old sketches, the files, all pointed to the same truth. The block itself had rules, and it punished disobedience in ways no one survived to describe. Cameras glitched violently. When they returned, Tyson was sitting cross-legged, eyes closed. Shadows twisted unnaturally across the floor. A low hum filled the hallway, like a warning. I realized this wasn't random. It was intelligent. The block observed patterns, repeated routines, and punished those who strayed. My mind screamed to leave, but every exit felt miles away. Fear had a weight, and I was drowning in it. At 3:11 a.m., the shadow lunged, disappearing before reaching me, leaving only darkness and silence. Tyson whispered, "It tests them. Always tests." My legs shook, my hands trembled. I understood I was a part of this cycle, now trapped in a repeating pattern. The block wasn't just a building, it was alive, patient, and endlessly hungry. And the shadows weren't bound to the cells, they could reach anywhere, even me. The following night, I arrived early, heart pounding. Tyson's routine began, the shadow emerging as always. This time, it moved faster, reacting to my presence. I froze, unable to look away. The old folders flashed in my mind guard's warnings, sketches of impossible shapes, whispers of, "It tests them." I realized the block didn't just watch, it adapted. I was part of its pattern now. Tyson whispered again, eyes unfocused. "It doesn't care about me. It cares about who watches." My stomach churned. The shadow stretched across the hallway, long and fluid, then recoiled like sensing me. I could feel it observing my fear, measuring it. Every step I wanted to take felt heavier. I understood now that the horror wasn't him. It was the prison itself, alive in ways no human could explain. Lights flickered violently. The shadow swirled, moving closer than ever. I tried radioing the main office, but static swallowed my voice. Tyson crouched, whispering unintelligible words to the wall. I realized each night, each event, each flicker was part of a cycle repeating decades. Guards before me had felt it. Prisoners had lived it. And now, I was part of the pattern trapped inside an unending nightmare. The shadow paused right where I stood, cold pressing against my skin, unseen but palpable. Tyson's voice whispered, "Do not look behind you." My instincts screamed otherwise. I turned my head, and nothing was there, yet the feeling of being watched intensified. The block itself seemed to pulse around me, alive, patient, testing my fear. I understood the truth. This place didn't just imprison bodies. It consumed attention, memory, sanity. That night, the shadow did something no one had seen before. Suddenly, the shadow stretched toward me, elongating impossibly, brushing the walls and floor like liquid. Tyson sat silently, murmuring words I couldn't understand. The air was thick with dread. My every breath felt wrong. I wanted to scream, but sound wouldn't come. I realized the block thrived on fear, repetition, attention, and now I had given it both. Whatever followed the shadows had found me. The vent rattled violently above Tyson's cell, louder than ever. I jumped back, eyes wide. The shadow recoiled, then flickered across the hallway in impossible angles. Every instinct screamed to leave, but I was trapped, frozen by a force I could not see. The old sketches, the guards' warnings, they all made sense now. This was no ordinary prison. Something beyond human comprehension controlled the block, feeding on fear nightly. At exactly 3:11 a.m., the shadow vanished, leaving darkness and silence. Tyson whispered softly, eyes closed, "It will always return. It never forgets." I knew that I wasn't just a witness. I was part of the cycle. Every night, every flicker, every shadow repeated. The block didn't need inmates. It needed fear. And now, it had me. Even after leaving, I would carry it with me. Every dark corner, every flickering light, every whispered warning. The morning after my final night, Tyson was gone. Guards acted normal, pretending nothing happened. The cameras had no evidence. I packed my things, heart heavy, mind racing. Walking out, I felt the block watching, even from outside its walls. Shadows seemed to cling to the corners of my vision. I realized some horrors don't stay behind bars. They follow, patient, waiting for attention, feeding silently on fear. At home, 3:11 a.m. became unbearable. Lights flickered, cold spots appeared, whispers brushed past my ears. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was imagination, but deep down I knew better. Tyson had warned me, and I understood now. The block's influence didn't end at the gates. Whatever haunted that place could reach anywhere. Shadows didn't need walls. They only needed fear, and I had given them plenty. I never returned to the prison, but I still hear it. The faint hum in vents, the whispering in silence, the flicker of lights at 3:11 a.m. I carry the block with me, unseen, patient, waiting. Tyson was never the cause, he was a witness, like me. And sometimes I catch myself staring at a wall or floor, expecting to see shadows that aren't there. Some nightmares never end, and this one had claimed me completely.